Edition with Mike Duffy.
Hello from Ottawa and welcome to Sunday Edition. Mike Duffy is on vacation. I'm Carol Ann Meehan. I'll be sitting in for the next couple of weeks. Today on this Sunday Edition, we'll go to the barricades in Oka, Quebec for an update on the standoff between the Mohawks and the Quebec Police Force. We'll introduce you to a new type of television that puts you in the director's chair. We'll go to Ontario's Algonquin Park, where astronomers are scanning the heavens listening for aliens. We'll go west to Saskatchewan and look at one of the most beautiful sights on Earth. And we'll go to Canada's National Art Gallery to look at the work of Emily Carr. We'll have these stories and a lot more, but first, the Sunday news. In Oka, Quebec, the standoff between armed Mohawk warriors and the Quebec Provincial Police is now into its 12th day. It began when Quebec police stormed a barricade the Mohawks erected to prevent the expansion of a golf course. A Quebec policeman was killed during the assault. Negotiators for the Mohawks are demanding that the federal government recall Parliament to deal with what they're calling a national crisis. The federal government has refused, saying they won't negotiate at gunpoint. CTV's Joy Melbom is in Oka, Quebec, and sends this report.
Wearing a bulletproof vest, Quebec Cabinet Minister Claude Ryan gave moral support to the police in Oka. He came to their barricade where armed police are holding out in this standoff against the Mohawks. Ryan says negotiations with the natives are at a dead end.
They're on the ground here, and you've got to find a solution that's close to the realities. I don't have to go to the United Nations for that.
The Mohawks have demanded international intervention and removal of police barricades even before negotiations can begin on the town's plan to expand a golf course claimed by the natives.
The first step has to be a meeting of the three preconditions. Mr. Sidden and Mr. Siacha will have to represent the federal government on a nation-to-nation basis.
After 11 days behind this makeshift barricade, the Mohawks are beginning to worry about basic necessities like food. Store shelves inside Mohawk lines are empty, and some are relying on donations from a local food bank. The Mohawks say their basic rights to food and safety are being trampled on.
I didn't like it.
Rose Jacobson says her doctor hasn't been allowed behind police barriers to treat her. Still, she supports the Mohawk fight, a fight that has cost her close friends and left her caught in the middle.
I don't feel like going to show my face in front of all my friends. I don't know if I'm shy or ashamed or what, or mad. I don't know where I am. It's very hard.
Generations have fought over this land before, as the little girl Rose remembers her relatives fighting the golf course from its very beginning.
My father and his brother and the others like Hervey's father and men like that, they were tearing the round apart, eh? They don't want the white men to... It used to be the pasture.
The Mohawks lost that battle several years ago, but they're determined not to lose this one, and they become more entrenched about their demands than ever before. Joy Melvin, CTV News, Oka, Quebec.
Oka is not the only place where the Mohawks and Quebec police are staring at each other across barricades. The Mohawks are maintaining their sympathy blockade of the Mercier Bridge, a major commuter route into Montreal. Last night, it was quiet at the bridge. The Mohawks set fire to tires on their side of the blockade. The smoke drifted over the police barricades. Crowds of onlookers gathered behind police lines, but there was none of the ugliness we saw earlier in the week when angry crowds burned effigies of Indians. CTV's Dave Rinn is at the Mercier Bridge in Chateauguay, Quebec today. He's on the line now. Dave, are there any talks going on right now to end this standoff?
Not that we know of, Carol Ann. There have been behind-the-scenes negotiations, if you like, or at least discussions going on all week, but nothing substantive. The talks, as you heard Claude Ryan say this morning, have simply reached a dead end.
Now, Dave, we've heard stories of ex-Vietnam vets, mercenaries, ex-cons with underworld ties, also manning the barricades there. Have you heard anything about that? Can you tell us something about it?
Well, I think the Mohawk community is a very diverse one. There are all sorts of elements at play within the particular standoff, and yes, there are some of those people there. How many, we're not sure. Where they come from, we don't really know, and they don't want to tell us. But the Mohawk community, certainly at Oka, is united in their cause, and for them, that's all that matters.
Could the fact that it is such a diverse group, could that hamper negotiations with the federal government or with the Quebec government?
It's made it very difficult so far. Quebec's Native Affairs Minister, John Chacha, has literally thrown up his hands and said, I don't know who to talk to anymore. To give you an example, in 1988, there were 22 chiefs appointed to a 9-member band council. And the council at Oka is not elected. The membership is appointed by a group called the Clan Mothers, who are the hereditary group in charge of a community. They appointed 22 chiefs in 1988. This year, they keep rotating them through, so nobody really knows who is in charge, and that has been one of the problems.
Well, we've also seen several names bandied about of negotiators. That's what I'm talking about. Who is this William Nutzler from the States?
Well, he's a longtime U.S. civil rights activist. He started off on the road with Martin Luther King, Jr. He's been involved with the Black Panthers. He was at Wounded Knee. He has a long history of dealing with Native issues. Some people are suggesting he may be a bit out of his element in this one. Even within the Mohawk community itself, they appreciate his support and advice, but they don't necessarily listen to what he has to say. He has had an impact, if you like, on what they've been saying to the Quebec government and to Ottawa. The demands initially at Oka were pretty simple and straightforward in terms of land claims, and then suddenly they escalated where the only way to resolve this dispute was to take it to the World Court and that sort of thing. Well, as you heard Claude Ryan say earlier, that's simply not on. But that's Kunstler's influence, if you like, in these negotiations, pushing the Indian cause.
Tom Siddon says the federal government is trying to negotiate to buy that land. If he succeeds, would that be enough to make the Mohawks lay down their arms and to negotiate with Ottawa?
No, the Mohawks have made that very clear. It's simply not enough, and the position adopted locally by the Mohawks in Oka was endorsed by the tribal chiefs who gathered here this week from across the country. The golf course, if you like, that particular land due for the second 9 holes of the golf course is only one part of several pieces of land. A sort of checkerboard effect would be the end result if Ottawa's package was accepted by the Mohawks, and they're not going to go for that.
Dave, it was good to talk to you.
Thank you, Caroline.
Only emergency crews will remain in the Yukon town of Old Crow today. Everyone else is being evacuated as a raging forest fire threatens the town. The blaze is now just 5 kilometers from Old Crow, and firefighters there say shifting winds may make the situation even worse. Another wall came down last night in Berlin. Thousands of rock fans jammed an area that was once a no man's land between east and west. It was an all-star concert rendition of Pink Floyd's The Wall. Rona Elliott reports.
Almost 200,000 people crowded onto the original site of the Berlin Wall, once known as the Death Strip, to watch the 2-hour show. The audience came from all over the world, east and west. The concert was a benefit for the Memorial Fund for Disaster Relief, created by Sir Leonard Cheshire, a World War II bomber pilot. He aims to raise $1 billion for the fund. That's $10 for each life lost in wars this century.
By remembering a past life lost, you can save a future one.
East Germans looked on at a spectacle that less than a year ago would have been beyond their imagination. The West German group of Scorpions were in disbelief, too. They'd never played in the East before. They'd always been banned.
People coming together, and music seems to be the bridge between cultures.
Right.
While this event was a theatrical extravaganza, for many of the young people, it symbolized their hopes and dreams as the bricks came tumbling down. Rona Elliott, NBC News, Berlin.
As you might imagine, the standoff in Quebec continues to be the main lead in Sunday editions across the country. Quebec's Education Minister Claude Ryan visited the barricades Saturday and said that negotiations have hit a dead end. Halifax's Sunday paper, the Daily News, is reporting that Nova Scotians can expect trouble from the Micmacs if police in Quebec storm the barricades.
Watch. Only one of these tape players will outlast the others. Duracell. The one that lasts.
Now there's a lottery that helps to protect the environment. and gives you the most ways to win of any lottery. Clean Sweep, because we all could use a little something for a rainy day.
Get out and play Hawks Bingo tonight in the Nipawin Evergreen Center. Come out and support the Hawks. Doors open at 6:15 with early bird games starting at 7:15. Play Hawks Bingo tonight in the Nipawin Evergreen Center for fun and cash prizes.
He was the voice of the homeless.
The next time you see someone out on the street, don't pass them by.
But that voice was silenced when he took his own life. A tribute to Mitch Schneider on the next Oprah Winfrey Show.
Monday at 2 on CIPA TV.
Few Canadians have their fingers on the pulse of the nation like radio open line show hosts. And joining us now for our Sunday edition panel are two well-known open line broadcasters. In St. John's at VOCM Radio, Bill Rowe, and at CKVL Radio in Montreal, Pierre Pasco. Gentlemen, it's been a week of high drama and flaring tempers over the Oka dispute, and one in which the lack of federal intervention was strongly criticized. Pierre Pasco in Montreal, you're the closest to this. Do you perceive a change in public attitude since this dispute began now almost 2 weeks ago?
They are very fed up with what's going on. They are fed up with the attitude of the federal government, which has not done its job as far as people are concerned, as far as the Mohawks are concerned, and also as far as the Quebec government is concerned, because on Thursday, John Chacha, the man who was negotiating with the Mohawks, said, I can't do any more now. What the Mohawks are asking for is in the field of the federal government, and the federal government has to take it into its hands. That's why Tom Siddon gave a press conference on Thursday. And people in the area of Montreal, because as you probably know, Oka and Cocknawaga are both very close to Montreal, and people are worried, people are scared, and people are fed up.
Well, the situation's had repercussions right across the country. Bill Rowe in St. John's, what are the people there saying about it?
Well, people in St. John's who are very interested in this as well, because we've had problems in Labrador, particularly with the NATO base that was proposed for there. We can talk about that later, but people are very concerned about that, as well as the fact that Tom Siddon is the Minister of Indian Affairs. Now, Tom Siddon was Minister of Fisheries for a number of years and presided over one of the biggest crises ever to face the fishery on the east coast of Canada, and not to mention all of Canada completely. And a lot of people I've talked to, Carol Ann, are saying, well, if Tom Siddon does the same kind of job in Indian Affairs in this particular crisis as he did in trying to deal with the fisheries, for which he was bounced from his portfolio and put into Indian Affairs, if he does the same job there, then people are not holding out too much positive hope for an early resolution of the problem as far as the federal government is concerned.
So not much confidence in Mr. Siddon out there?
No, based on experience, too, because here the economy of this province and the East Coast generally, Nova Scotia and parts of Quebec, of course, Pierre would know that, suffer from the crisis in the fishery. And Tom Siddon sort of fiddled while Rome burned on the matter, and people, he was, as I say, he was moved out of his portfolio finally because he had lost the credibility of the whole industry, unions and the people who run the plants and the fishermen and everybody else. So I don't know, the initial remarks and the initial posture of Mr. Siddon, which is kind of a hands-off one, doesn't strike anyone here as surprising at all, because he took the same kind of position of non-involvement and a lackadaisical attitude towards the whole thing in the fishery, as he seems to be doing with this crisis with the natives of Canada.
But what sets these two disputes apart, though, is the fact that the Mohawks have decided to arm themselves and arm themselves very heavily. Pierre, how is that being viewed? Is there a real sense of danger there?
Oh, very much so, Carol Ann. I've heard from sources very close to the cabinet, to the government, to Premier Bourassa, that the provincial police never expected the Mohawks to be so well armed. And when we talk about the Mohawks, we mean mainly what they call the warriors. There are maybe 100 to 150 of them, and my sources tell me that most of them come from the United States. They may well be Vietnam veterans. Some of them have committed some crimes in the United States, and they are very well armed. and they are extremely dangerous, and they really don't care one way or the other. They have nothing to lose, and they're going to go all the way out. To make matters worse, in Oka, they have put the women and the children in front of them on the barricades, and the provincial police is very scared of anything happening, and women and children, Mohawk children and women, being killed or being hurt if a skirmish happens. And this is why they really can't do anything, you know. Their hands are tied. They are not soldiers, they're a police force, and they have never been faced with a situation like this.
Caroline, if I could just jump in here and say that I just arrived back from England myself, and I was talking to some journalists over there who, the reason I talked to them is because I wanted to see what kind of an impact the native presentation in Europe had on the failure of the NATO base to go to Labrador. That was, the failure there was attributable not only to the Cold War de-escalating, but also to the fact that a handful of natives from Labrador, Innu from Labrador, went over to Europe, went over to England and other places in Europe, and captured the imagination of the press. Elijah Harper in Manitoba captured the imagination of the press, and I find that what's going on now is capturing the imagination of the international press as well. So I make that point because it's very easy for us living here in Canada to underestimate the tremendous impact on international public opinion and on the international media that a small number of Aboriginals, native groups in Canada can indeed make.
Well, I think the federal government's hands-off approach has almost forced the Mohawks to go international. They have 2 lawyers from New York asking for involvement from the American administration, and now they want their day in front of the World Court.
Well, Caroline, I don't think that's quite true, because the Quebec Minister of Indian Affairs, John Chacha, has been negotiating with the Mohawks all along. And I don't think it's because the federal government was not negotiating. John Chacha was commissioned by Tom Siddon to talk to the Mohawks, and now he says that the Mohawks have changed their attitude since last Saturday. What they wanted last Saturday, they no longer want now. What they want is much more. And there's that lawyer from Chicago who's arrived in Montreal, has been advising them to ask for much more. And the thing is escalating right now. And do you know something about the provincial police? There are more than 1,000 men in Oka, maybe several hundreds in Caughnawaga, and the whole thing is costing more than $1 million in overtime per day that this is going on. And it's turning out to be a very expensive and costly proposition.
Pierre, there's also been a sense, though, that the federal government and the Bourassa government have been handling this like a hot potato, throwing responsibility back and forth. Bill, is there a sense of irony in Newfoundland over this? After all, Newfoundland wanted to contain the powers of Quebec during the constitutional negotiations, and here we have the government not wanting to take responsibility for this issue.
Well, there is that kind of irony there, but I see something else happening as well, Caroline, and it is this, that this thing is going to get worse before it gets better, I do believe, in that as the international media I spoke of in the United States, and the international lawyers, of course, attracting that attention as well, these hotshot lawyers who have always attracted media attention, as well as the native groups themselves being sort of an exotic people as far as a lot of the international media is concerned. This is going to snowball and snowball, and we're going to see Aboriginal groups all over North America and perhaps in other countries as well showing solidarity to the people in Oka. This has already started, of course, and is going to continue. I see this snowballing out into a situation where it may get out of control in other places in North America before it gets better.
There is something else I want to say about that. Apparently, it's the same warriors that we saw in Akwesasne that we see now in Caughnawaga and in Oka. It's the same band of people going around to different reservations and different groups of Mohawks and, according to some people, causing trouble.
Gentlemen, if we can change topics, let's go now from politics to religion. The winter report this week prompted Newfoundland Archbishop Alphonsus Penny to offer his resignation. Bill Rowe, is the overriding opinion that it's too late?
Yes, I think so. Archbishop Alphonsus Penny showed abysmal leadership throughout. the last couple of years on this matter, and I think that's a general consensus in public opinion here. There's also a feeling that he's the fall guy, that he has assumed all of the burden and responsibility when there had to be many, many more people, Carol Ann, in the hierarchy of the church who knew exactly what was going on over the years and failed to report it to the authorities and were more interested in damage control than dealing with the healing process of the trauma to the victim. So a lot of people are saying there has to be a lot of rot rooted out yet before the healing process in the Catholic Church here in this province can begin.
Okay, gentlemen, what stories should we be looking to follow this week, do you think?
I think my own feeling is that the natives rights story and the Oka story is going to snowball, as I said, and dominate the media for some weeks to come. I don't see how the governments can hope to deal with it either politically or in the media.
Pierre, what do you think?
Exactly the same thing. It's going to get much worse, I'm afraid. And the government has let it rot so much that I really don't know what they can do. The federal government is right to say that it does not want to negotiate with a bunch of terrorists with rifles in their hands. But then if they don't want to drop their arms, what do? And there's a major bridge in Montreal which is blocked by the Mohawks. Many roads are blocked, and it's inconveniencing the Montreal population very, very much, and we're getting fed up.
Pierre Pasco in Montreal, Bill Rowe in St. John's, thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye. Same to you, Carol Ann. Bye-bye.
When we return, the future of television. But first, this story is making headlines in today's Toronto Star. Cuban police are trying to prevent dissidents from seeking asylum in foreign embassies. Edmonton readers are looking at this headline in their Sunday Journal.
Come with us to a place beyond the stars. A place where technology and creativity collide with awesome result. This is the world of synthesizers. The world of synthesizers. A double album so unique, so captivating, it has sold millions worldwide. Hear the popular theme from Beverly Hills Cop, plus the theme from Miami Vice. Experience the haunting theme from Chariots of Fire. Only the most discriminating taste will truly appreciate the world of synthesizers. This remarkable double album collection is only available in this special TV offer. You cannot buy this album in any store, anywhere, at any price. Europeans have made this album a mega seller, and now it's sure to become one of your treasured favorites too. Treat yourself to something different, something totally new. Come, escape with us to a world where beauty and motion are one. World of synthesizers from Quality Records, the most unique album concept on television today.
Visa, MasterCard, COD charges, call 922-9050 or save COD charges by sending $14.98 for 2 albums or 1 extended cassette, or $19.98 for 1 compact disc, plus $3.50 postage and handling to the World of Synthesizers, Box 2225, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. That's the World of Synthesizers, Box 2225, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Call now. Operators are standing by. Remember, this offer could end without notice, so call 922-9050 now.
Just when it looked like the Expos were going to take their slump and turn it into a free fall, the Houston Astros were introduced to the two Tims. Tim Raines, who knocked in the winning run, Tim Burke, who pitched 2 innings of shutout relief to bring Montreal to a 3-2 win. Here's the rest of your Sunday scoreboard. Armchair quarterbacks, if this works out, you may never have to get up again. Interactive television is coming to baseball. If you live in the Montreal area, served by Videotron Cable TV, you'll be able to call the shots, pick your own instant replays for the Expo Pirates game Tuesday night. It's a one-shot deal. Interactive TV may sound futuristic, but it's already here for Montreal viewers. Back in April, Sunday Edition's Richard Gisbert traveled to Montreal to see what all the fuss was about. Here's his report.
Pascal McCoy and her sister Julie are doing what millions of kids their age like to do. Sit at home after school in front of the TV. But they're not just watching TV, they're competing. The show is in French. It's called Safari Game, a quiz show about the animal kingdom. In the studio, there are some equally young contestants, but before they can play, the host asks the McCoy sisters and other viewers at home a question. Which of these 4 animals doesn't grow antlers? Pascal chooses number 3, mountain goats. She enters the appropriate button on her converter, watches her selection show up on the bottom left-hand part of her screen, and then waits for the television to tell her if she's correct. The bell means it's the right answer. After the studio contestants field their question, it's Julie's turn. Her question is about sea urchins. This time, the buzzer indicates she's wrong. But more importantly, Julie's learned something.
Well, I think it's great because you can, like, actually play it. Also, it's not like these games like Jeopardy. You just watch it and learn. Now you can learn and play. Like, it's more fun, I think.
Interactive TV has also come to the world of sports. At the Montreal Forum, home of the Canadiens, a special broadcast is being prepared with extra cameras to isolate on certain players. However, it won't be the director calling those shots. It will be a viewer at home. He has a choice. Either stick with the main feed or use his remote control to follow his favorite player.
You have the feeling that you decide what you want to check yourself and when you want to see a replay.
And there are other interactive shows, an exercise program where the viewer, not the host, decides how difficult the workout will be. How about a little blackjack? The decision to hit or stick is relayed via remote control. How does it all work? The system is based on 4 videotapes playing simultaneously. The remote control has an extra 4 buttons that actually switch channels from one videotape to another. In the case of the exercise show, from one level of difficulty to another. In the case of the quiz shows, viewers are offered 4 possible answers. The 4 videotapes, therefore, cover all the possibilities. The system was developed in New York, but a Montreal cable company, Videotron, bought 50% of the action worldwide, along with exclusive rights in Canada. So it's here in Montreal that television history is being made, not just in entertainment programming, but also in news. The interactive system means that television news can now do some things that up until now only the print media could do. For instance, whether people realize it or not, they've always interacted with their newspapers, first checking out the headlines and then turning to the stories that they were interested in. But television news could never do that because there was just one signal. That meant that television news had to anticipate the story that the viewer would be interested in and then had to keep that story short for fear of losing that viewer to another channel. The new interactive system offers the viewer the headline and then the option for more information. Only the viewer doesn't turn the page, he pushes a button. The evening news on Channel 10 in Montreal starts the same way any newscast would, with the anchorman introducing the day's top stories. Viewers who pay the extra $18.95 a month for interactive service can push a button and get the same newscast in the top corner of the screen while getting the closing figures from the financial markets. And later, rather than watching the second half of the newscast, they can push another button and watch an extended interview on one of the day's top stories. For instance, racial tensions in Montreal. Or, if they prefer, a special report on organ transplants. Channel 10 is the only station to offer interactive news because it happens to be owned by Videotron, the cable company. The people who put the newscast together, though, predict that one day all broadcasters will be forced to follow their lead. They'll have to maintain their audience.
I think so, because people are more hurry, and they want to see more, but they don't want to spend time. So they have to do more at the same time. So in half an hour, we offer them almost 1 hour and a half, and they have the choice to do it.
The future of interactive TV, like all TV, depends on these numbers in the ratings book. Jacques Dorion, an advertising executive, is intrigued by the possibilities the new technology presents. He envisions advertisers targeting different commercials within the same news program, depending on what segments the viewer chooses to watch. One example would be selling financial services to those watching the stock quotations, while selling jogging shoes to viewers who switch to the extended sportscast.
For advertisers, in theory, it means that eventually you'll be able to select better your target group and to select some programming to attract, to match your advertising with your programming.
If interactive TV is to really take off, though, it will take more than one Montreal television station, more than one cable company. Any broadcaster who wants the technology will have to buy a license from André Chagnon, who runs Videotron. Today, he has only 20,000 subscribers, but he sounds confident that his technology will eventually sell itself.
We have offered to all the broadcasters of the interactive television concept. Radio Quebec seemed to be ready to move with certain programs. The people of Radio Canada are watching very closely. They come and they question and so on. But it's like anything that's new. There's always resistance. Let's wait and see.
And if the interactive TV experiment moves beyond Montreal and catches on elsewhere, André Chagnon will be more than just a broadcasting pioneer. He'll be a very rich man.
Yes.
For Sunday Edition, I'm Richard Gisbert in Montreal.
When we return, we'll go to Eastern Ontario and search the skies for neighbors from space.
If you have a bank card with this symbol on it, the Royal Bank has two words for you: cash counter. Cash counters are located in drugstores, supermarkets, and convenience stores across the country. So with your bank card, you can get money where you need it and when you need it. And the Royal Bank has more of these machines than anyone else. That's convenience. From Canada's leader in self-serve banking, the Royal Bank.
Some things are more important to your peace of mind than you realize, like knowing how to maintain regularity without drugs or medication. But do you know nutrition experts recommend increasing your dietary fiber intake as a drug-free way to promote regularity? And did you know that All Bran, as part of a balanced diet, is a very high source of dietary fiber? Kellogg's All Bran, every day, a drug-free way to promote regularity.
Possibly been drinking.
I'm a surgeon. If you could see what I see when auto accident victims are brought to the hospital, you would not drink and drive. Alcohol is the largest single factor in fatal auto crashes. Alcohol affects the way you see, think, and act. Are you kidding yourself that you know how much you can drink and still drive safely?
For your information, Gateway Denture Clinic in the Gateway Mall is open weekdays with complete and partial denture services. All new work is guaranteed at Gateway Denture Clinic.
Call on PA General Electric for sales, service, and installation of refrigeration, air conditioning, and heating systems. Providing preventative maintenance and 24-hour service, they are supplier of Carrier products.
The Deluxe Cafe offers a varied menu including Chinese and Western dishes. They also have a delivery service plus a discount on pickup orders. Call 764-0555.
Are we alone? It's an age-old question, one that keeps self-taught astronomer Robert Stevens scanning the skies listening for messages from aliens. Stevens works out of a remote extraterrestrial listening post in Algonquin Park, a couple of 100 kilometers northwest of Ottawa. Last fall, Sunday Edition's Terry Marcotte traveled to Algonquin Park to listen in.
While others sleep, Robert Stevens is kept awake each night by a dream of life on other planets. Belief that aliens are trying to reach us by beaming radio signals through space.
There's no way that we could be alone in this vast bubbling universe. Why should we be unique?
In the remote wilderness of Algonquin Park, this radio telescope acts as the ear to the sky. It was abandoned 20 years ago by the University of Toronto. Stevens has brought it back to life to gather a steady flow of signals from space, silent to the ear, but music to the graphs showing Stevens that his dish is working. For all he knows, all he receives is interference. signals like radio stations and passing airplanes. One day he hopes to see something different, a message from alien intelligence. For nearly a decade, that dream has kept him going.
I can do it. I've got a handle on the equipment that, you know, I've built this darn thing myself. So I understand it. I know enough about astronomy, and I know enough about communications from my background. And I've stuck with it.
By day, Stevens puts his dish to rest. Across the treetops, though, less than a kilometer away, another radio telescope is awakening. This one is newer and much larger. It was a victim of National Research Council budget cuts 2 years ago, and it too has caught the attention of people interested in listening for aliens in space. In Algonquin Park, at least, Robert Stevens is not alone. Earl Jackson has come to this remote park in Ontario from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California. NASA is willing to spend millions listening for aliens. This huge dish is not the only attraction. Because it's so far from anywhere, the skies are quiet. All the better for pinpointing messages that may be coming from aliens.
So if it turns out to be very quiet here, that's good, particularly since we've got a very large antenna to work with.
Any noise is bad noise, except if it's
From our standpoint, any signals that are not of extraterrestrial origin are bad.
Jackson comes here as more than a technician. Like Robert Stevens, he too is a believer.
When you look up at the sky at night and you see all those stars, you've got to believe that some of them have planets, some of them have civilizations of ours, you know, very similar to our own.
And if you don't try,
you don't find them. If you don't try, you'll never know.
Robert Stevens shares that curiosity. He only wishes he could share NASA's money. Buying and maintaining equipment worth thousands of dollars has put him in the poorhouse. His obsession with signals from space began nearly a decade ago in his backyard, moved to the Northwest Territories, and now finds a home in Algonquin Park. He has managed to patch together a listening post that's functional, but barely.
ET could be knocking right now, but because I don't have the sophisticated back-end computer to process the data, I can't know.
But is anyone listening to Robert Stevens? The National Research Council has provided some help, a part-time job maintaining the old equipment in Algonquin Park. Scientists in Ottawa have followed Stevens' work, and they're impressed.
He's had to learn a lot. He's learned it on his own. He's learned electronics. He's learned astronomy. It's not easy to build a radio telescope and make it operate, or to take over an old telescope and make it operate as a radio telescope. Bob's been able to do this.
But respect doesn't keep a car on the road or put food on the table. Stevens needs money for that, and the National Research Council has no money to throw his way. His best bet may be his rich American neighbor. Earl Jackson likes what Stevens has been able to accomplish, mostly on his own. They may be working independently, but they're working on the same idea, that intelligent life exists in space. A passionate belief that puts these two men on the same wavelength.
To think that we're alone in the universe is as foolish as to imagine that all of the grains of sand on a beach are alike.
We can argue for centuries or for the rest of the history of the human race about whether or not we're alone here, but unless we actually look, set up an experiment and look, we'll never know for sure.
His backdrop may be the beauty of Algonquin Park, but Robert Stevens isn't taken in by the sights. He's interested in the sounds, and right now he doesn't like what he's hearing. His job may soon be cut, and with no money, his future is uncertain. But Stevens is no quitter, and even if he's forced to leave here, if NASA has no place for him, he's determined to carry on, probing the skies, looking for signals from space that confirm his belief that we are not alone. For Sunday Edition, I'm Terry Marcotte in Algonquin Park, Ontario.
Since that story first aired last fall, Robert Stevens has continued his search of the heavens for signs that we're not alone. He's been given a 6-month extension on his contract with the National Research Council. He'll continue his search for sounds from space until September. The American Search for Life in Space group has run into funding problems and now faces an uncertain future. When Sunday Edition returns, we'll take you on a journey west to the Athabasca sand dunes.
July 1942, air raid sirens scream as young Spitfire pilots of 416 Squadron scramble to engage the enemy. Meet one of those brave young aces, Flight Lieutenant Jackie Ray, winner of the DFC and founding member of Canada's Spitfire Band. Now, close your eyes and join us in the Make-Believe Ballroom, a superb new double album starring the Spitfire Band. Over 30 classic songs of the Spitfire era on one remarkable double album set. The Make-Believe Ballroom is not available in any store, so get your pencil and paper ready and stand by to order yours. Revisit a special place in time with the incredible Spitfire Band.
It's Make-Believe Ballroom time.
The Make-Believe Ballroom, starring the Spitfire Band, on double LP, super cassette, or compact disc from Quality Records. Order now.
Visa, MasterCard, COD charges. Call 922-9050 or save COD charges by sending $14.98 for 2 albums or 1 extended cassette, or $19.98 for 1 compact disc, plus $3.50 postage and handling to Make-Believe Ballroom, Box 2225, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. That's Make-Believe Ballroom, Box 2225, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Call now. Operators are standing by. Remember, this offer could end without notice, so call 922-9050 now.
Stuck way up in a corner of Saskatchewan is one of the most unusual spots in the world, the Athabasca sand dunes. 1,500 square kilometers of sand that's been drifting and blowing ever since the end of the last ice age. Alan Bell Chambers takes us to one of the loneliest but one of the most beautiful spots on Earth.
Just about as far north as you can go in Saskatchewan. On the south shore of Lake Athabasca, this is what you would have seen soon after the glacier melted. When the huge lakes drained into the Arctic Ocean, a sea of sand was exposed and whipped into dunes by the wind. These dunes have been rolling here for 8,000 years.
This is the only place where we have these great long high dunes.
Stan Rowe, professor emeritus at the University of Saskatchewan, was part of a scientific team that studied the dunes for 3 years. He returned as our guide because he believes people who see the dunes will join the effort to protect and preserve them.
I suppose the whole idea is to maintain something as nature gives it to us rather than tearing it up.
Here, west of the William River, the dunes can stretch out for 1.5 kilometers. At the crest, they're 30 meters high. While a few grasses cling to the edges, plant life cannot get a good toehold to slow or stop the dunes because rainfall and snow melt sink far below the surface. And there is a surface leveled by the wind.
This is called a desert pavement, and all through the sand there's a certain amount of stone. And as the sand is blown away by the wind, the pebbles are concentrated at the surface. So you get a desert pavement, and this is common in deserts around the world. Matter of fact, it's called a gobi. The Gobi Desert is a gravel desert, and these little patches of gravel out in the sand, or sometimes quite extensive patches, are called gobis. So we're walking in a Gobi Desert here.
That layer of stones prevents any further erosion, but it's only a fragile crust. These dune buggy tracks were made 3 years ago. The winds that raced across the face of the glacier sandblasted the stones until they had 3 sides. And geologically speaking, it happened quickly.
They were formed very soon after the retreat of the ice. And the time frame that we're talking about is few hundred years, not thousands.
But you can see the 3-sided effect here along the crest.
The prevailing winds push the dunes eastward until they slip into the William River. still working on the boulders dropped by the glacier, and still cutting the bedrock of Athabasca sandstone, the source of the dune sand. The river also carries 3,000 tons of sand a day. Lake Athabasca has been stable long enough for plants to anchor the delta, but any significant drop in the water level would expose vast sandbars which could be transformed into dunes. These underwater dunes are included in the Parkland Reserve, as well as the dunes stabilized by plant life. Ken Lozinski of the Saskatchewan Parks Branch says the government is intent on controlling any future development in or near the dunes.
If society deems it necessary that in the long run that there's a higher public use for this area, then I guess they will tell us that. At this point in time, we're suggesting that the highest public use for this area is protected parkland.
What the government has not yet decided is what kind of park this should be. Intensive camping and recreation is out, but the degree of protection is the question.
This is a hoary tansy, and it has rather gray leaves. The petals have fallen off this.
The leaves are gray to combat glare from the sun off the sand, a common trait among plants here. But this variety of tansy is special because it's an endemic plant.
There are 10 species, subspecies, and varieties that have evolved here, or at least have found a refuge here, and they're found nowhere else in the world, nowhere else in Saskatchewan either.
Stan Rowe says only the hardiest can survive here. The plants are part of an evolutionary puzzle that scientists would like to try to unravel. Other plants, like sea lime grass, are also sources of whimsical thought.
An interesting grass because it's said that the Vikings used it as a food plant. And, of course, that raises the possibility that perhaps sometime in the past some Vikings were through here and seeded the grass.
Rowe is credited with helping to convince provincial politicians to make this region a parkland reserve. He is passionate on the subject.
We're gradually two-bitting all our marshes to death and our remaining native grasslands and so on. It could happen in the north, too. So what we need is some overall planning for the province and for Canada, where we decide, as the World Wildlife Fund has suggested, that we're going to preserve about 12% of the natural landscapes and natural ecosystems for all time. And this would be an excellent place to start.
In ancient times, this was a sacred place for the early Indians and Inuit who came here. They could see the Creator's handiwork. Early legends talked of giant beavers building the dunes. Legends noted by the first European explorers who paused to admire the view. But in the late 1700s, they were still looking for the easy route to China. These dunes were of no use to them, or the fur companies they worked for. Now about to become a park, the Athabasca sand dunes of Saskatchewan may not become a major tourist attraction, but this young part of Saskatchewan will be permitted a life of its own. For Sunday Edition, Alan Bellchambers near Lake Athabasca.
When we return, the magic of Emily Carr.
Now there's a lottery that helps to protect the environment and gives you the most ways to win of any lottery. Clean Sweep, because we'd all like to have a little nest egg.
We all know that some books are more useful than others. But here's a book that's truly invaluable. Perhaps the most useful book your family will ever own. Introducing the complete Webster's Encyclopedia of Dictionaries. 12 dictionaries in one hardcover, gold-embossed edition that can answer all your family's needs for facts and data. Amongst its beautifully illustrated pages, you'll find a complete English language dictionary, plus the famous Roget's Thesaurus. 3 language dictionaries. There's French, German, and Spanish. Dictionaries of occupational titles, medical terms, the Bible, business, scientific, even legal terms. The complete Webster's Encyclopedia of Dictionaries is a 36-in-1 library of reference works in one great volume. The encyclopedia section includes a full-color atlas with names, locations, and information on over 5,000 places. The complete Webster's Encyclopedia of Dictionaries is yours for only $29.95. Plus, if you order now, you'll get an amazing bonus, the revolutionary roller ruler, the high-tech geometric tool that is 5 instruments in one, perfect for home and office. Get the complete Webster's Encyclopedia of Dictionaries, plus the amazing roller ruler bonus, both for only $29.95.
Visa, MasterCard, COD charges. Call 922-9050. Or save COD charges by sending $29.95 for a set of both the Webster's Dictionary and the roller ruler. Plus $4 postage and handling to Dictionary and Roller Ruler. Box 2225, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan.
Prince Albert Television is proud to be a part of the Prince Albert exhibition. We would like you to take your guy or doll on the Midway rides free of charge on Thursday, August 2nd, starting at 7 o'clock. Drop by our booth in the Armories anytime Thursday, and we'll give you a Prince Albert Television Guys and Dolls Night sticker. Pay for your ride, and your guy or doll rides for free, providing they're wearing their Guys and Dolls Night sticker. Stickers are available only at the Prince Albert Television booth in the Armories on Thursday, August 2nd. Prince Albert Television, your exhibition information station.
This is the Big Valley near the tiny town of Craven, Saskatchewan. Thousands of people have poured into Craven for its annual Big Valley Jamboree. Today is the last day. Here's what the forecast has in store for Craven and for jamborees in your hometown. Art lovers from across the country are choosing Ottawa as a destination this summer. The reason? A new display at the National Gallery, a tribute to Canada's most famous woman artist, Emily Carr. Emily Carr was born in Victoria in 1871. She spent much of her early life traveling abroad to California, to England, and to France, where she studied art. But it's what Emily Carr did at home that gained her national and international acclaim. Her trips along the BC coastline through to Alaska, where she captured on canvas a record of Indian villages in vivid colors which seem to take you there. The exhibition continues until September 3rd. Joining us now is Anne Newlands of the National Gallery of Canada. And Emily Carr painted in a time which women weren't really accepted as artists, but she made a very distinctive mark. She must have been very determined.
Yes, she was very determined from her youth. Even as a young child, she would go into her back garden and draw to get away from her bossy older sisters and the rules of her household. And then as a young woman in Victoria, isolated from anywhere you could learn about art, she went first to San Francisco and then for several years to England, and then ultimately in 1910 to France. So she was ardent about learning.
Did studying in San Francisco and France influence her work?
Well, not really San Francisco or England, where she learned to be a kind of traditional watercolorist, but France was a big breakthrough for Emily, and she went there in search of what she'd called the new art, and then that radically changed the way she saw the world and the way she painted. So she came back to BC to paint her much-loved Indian totems in these bright colors, purples and greens and turquoises that people weren't used to seeing in BC.
Well, West Coast native life is a theme that dominates her work. Why her interest in Indian art?
Well, Emily was drawn to Indian art mostly through the native people themselves, with whom she felt a certain bond. Emily, I should call her Carr perhaps, was a rebel from her youth and felt slightly outside a traditional Victorian society, and so feeling somewhat marginal, she identified with the natives that were also in her time outside traditional native Victorian society. And so through the people, she became attracted to their art.
Yet that art wasn't really accepted then. Why?
Well, it was not that it wasn't accepted, it wasn't really being made anymore, and a lot of the native villages had been deserted for some time when Emily began to discover them. So she felt very strongly about the beauty and the strength and the power of Indian art, so she decided that she would make a strong commitment to make a collection of these documents before they disappeared, were ruined and destroyed, or were hauled off to museums.
Now, she gave up painting for more than 15 years. Why did she do that?
Well, after 1912, 1913, during which time she made about 200 paintings of the Indian theme, she had an exhibition, and really, in her words, nobody bought any paintings. So she couldn't survive as an artist, so she decided to open a boarding house, and she inherited a bit of land, and so she built a boarding house, and she hoped to live off the income from these rentals and then continue to paint. But landladying was much too burdensome, and she ended up being a landlady for 15 years.
How did she find her way back to art?
Well, ultimately through people like Marius Barbeau. She was invited to exhibit her works in 1927 at the National Gallery in an exhibition of native art, sort of ancient and modern. So she went to Ottawa, but more important than the exhibition, and the exhibition of about 24 of her paintings, was her meeting with a group of 7, and in particularly Lauren Harris.
Her painting changes dramatically after that meeting. Can you describe that change?
Yes, there's initially the influence of Lauren Harris is quite evident. Her painting becomes much more sculptural. The bold, daring colors of 1912 become more subdued. And Emily tries to sort of simplify her artistic language in order to make it more expressive. And this is the big change.
So really what we're looking at is an Emily Carr collection, or 2 collections in one, I guess.
Well, yes, in terms of her development as an artist, absolutely. Lots of phases and developments before she comes into her own with the oil on paper paintings, which are much looser and more open.
Do you think the work of Emily Carr can be classified?
I would say, in a way, she's a great nationalist. I would classify her that way in terms of her intentions and her devotion to the Canadian landscape. I wouldn't classify her stylistically, except she does fit in with the tastes or expression of other artists of her time, of the 30s, and I think somewhat with the intentions of the artists, the group of 7.
And thanks for talking to us today.
Okay, you're welcome.
Good luck with the exhibit.
Thank you.
Well, that's our report for this week. There will be more news later today on this CTV station. W5 will be here in prime time. Peter Murphy will be at the anchor desk at the end of the evening for the CTV National News, and we'll be back in 7 days. Until then, thanks for watching, and take care.
Tonight at 6:30, Luke Skywalker's continuing battle against the evil Empire, Return of the Jedi. Star Trek follows at 9 and W5 at 10 on CIPA TV.
Look at these plates.
What are you having, guys?
The usual.
Usual. Bran flakes.
Don't you usually get the usual? Usually.
Now I eat Kellogg's Bran flakes. They taste good.
So you're not having the usual?
Nope.
How come?
Look, I'm trying to eat food that's good for me.
You're trying to eat food that's good for you?
Yeah. Bran flakes is a good source of dietary fiber, which is good for you. Whole wheat, which is good for you. And nutrients, which are good for you.
So you think Bran flakes are good for you?
What, is there an echo in here?
Kellogg's Bran Flakes. Good for you.
Where's Robin?
You call him this time.
He'll be right down.
Why doesn't he ever help?
It's all right. He's just tired.
There's a disease that affects millions of people in the world today. A disease so powerful,
Bobby, honey.
it can destroy not only the one who has it, but the ones who love him. You don't have to drink to suffer from alcoholism. At Al-Anon, we know how much it hurts. We're here because we've been there. Call us now.
Grog Classics. 3 of the greatest from the 60s and 70s. Just $9.95 with a special 6-month trial membership in Columbia House. Fleetwood Mac's greatest hits. A decade of Steely Dan.
Are you reeling in the years?
Best of the doobies. The original recordings now better than ever on CD. Over $45 worth of great music for $9.95 with no further obligation. All 3 CDs just $9.95. Plus the quality and service you expect as a member of Columbia House. Call now. The music will last forever, but this offer won't. To order, call 1-800-338-6300. That's 1-800-338-6300. Visa, MasterCard, and American Express only. Get all 3 CDs for just $9.95 plus $3 shipping and handling. Nothing more to buy ever. No CODs and 10-day money-back guarantee. Call 1-800-338-6300.